Before we get started today, my name Heather Sabin. I wanted to let you know about what's in store for the upcoming months for the Wright Design Series. For those of you who are Madison-based, you know that the Wright Design Series has been an in-person lecture series for 20 years, in fact. And it's the pandemic, of course, that moved us to a virtual format. But for most of our time in person, we have enjoyed and benefited from a sponsor, and that sponsor is the American Institute of Architects, Wisconsin. Our partner at that organization typically programmed spring lectures with current architects that are doing really exciting work in the fields of architecture and city planning today. And so we would like to engage in that partnership again this spring. They will program our lectures, our monthly lectures, in March, April, and May. So I wanted to give you that information. If you saw a shift in the content from Frank Lloyd Wright or more historic topics to contemporary topics, that's why. In February, we will have a Wright-specific speaker again, but then do take note that from March through May, we'll be looking at our contemporary architects, and we really look forward to working with AIAW again. Now in June, perhaps we'll be picking up those Wright-specific lectures again. That is not the foreseeable future at this time. We don't know, but we'll keep you posted, and we hope to continue the monthly programs into the summer. So with that, as we watch today, I wanted to encourage you all to use the Q&A button to communicate. We don't use the chat feature for this lecture, so make sure that Q&A is how you are talking to us. Our guest today has graciously offered to answer questions following the presentation. We will get to as many as we can in the time we have. And you should also know our lecture is being recorded today and will be up on our website, mononaterrace.com/webinars. You go to our virtual library and you will find recordings. Give it a few days for us to take the video and put it up on the website. Well, it's now time for me to welcome our guest speaker today. We're thrilled to have Kathryn Feldt with us. She is the executive director of the Frank Lloyd Wright House in Ebsworth Park, originally known as the Kraus House. She's held that position for 3 years, but has had a lifelong fascination with Frank Lloyd Wright and organic architecture and design. Kathryn's held numerous leadership positions for arts and culture and other nonprofit organizations. She is passionate about the preservation of the Kraus House and never tires of sharing the story of Wright's little gem. So Kathryn, thanks so much for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Let me add, the wizard behind the curtain. We have someone who is technically supporting Kathryn today, and that's the associate director of the Frank Lloyd Wright House in Ebsworth Park, and that is Lydia Nunes. Thank you, Lydia.
The unsung hero of so many of our programs. Thank you, Heather. And you are so right. I do never get tired of telling this story, which has so many twists and turns. And as we all know, a very happy ending. It's good to have you all with us this afternoon. And while I would love to be doing this live and have you all at the house in person, I'm going to do my best to give you an up close and personal look at this remarkable Wright designed home that was cherished by its owners, lovingly restored by a group dedicated to its preservation, and a home that inspires thousands of visitors every year. So first, let's pretend we've just driven up the winding road that leads up to this remarkable home. The road is eclipsed with trees, beautiful nature all around. And now we're going to walk around the exterior of the house. We'll get that video going in just a moment. I hope you enjoyed the exterior tour of the house. We thought that was a fitting beginning. It shows the complex geometry and beautiful views. Right now, St. Louis, Kirkwood, Missouri, where the house is right outside, about 20 minutes outside of downtown St. Louis, and we've had a snow. So right now the house is sitting under a blanket of snow and looks quite magical, as you can imagine. It's only fitting to tell the story of this house from the very beginning, which starts with two remarkable people, Russell and Ruth Kraus, a couple very much in love and just starting their married life together. Russell Moreland Kraus was a St. Louis native born to German immigrant parents. He studied fine arts at Washington University, which is located here in St. Louis, taught art for a few years after graduation, then held several government positions, including working for the Works Program Administration, or the WPA as we commonly refer to it. Starting in 1948, he worked as a freelance commercial artist. Ruth Getz Kraus was a very impressive woman, one of the first women to graduate from the prestigious Washington University School of Law, excelling both academically and socially. She practiced law at a firm in St. Louis, and while working on a WPA project, she met and then married Russell Kraus. It's clear that Ruth's training as a lawyer, her outstanding communication skills, fierce determination, and resourcefulness were invaluable as she and Russell worked to make their plans for their Wright design dream home a reality. You can see those two pictures of the young couple. I'd like to talk about Russell Kraus's art for just a bit, since his work as an artist influenced the design of his home. Russell was a nationally recognized designer of tapestries, mosaics, jewelry, and liturgical glass. You're looking at a sample of Russell's work, including a WPA poster on the left, a painting of a religious icon, and one of numerous liturgical stained glass windows he designed. You can see Russell's liturgical glass designs in churches, numerous churches all across the country. You'll see another example of Russell's stained glass design a little later. Russell's desire for his home to reflect his creative lifestyle was a major driving force behind his pursuit of a Wright designed residence. So wanting a home conducive to a creative lifestyle was one thing, but what gave a newly married couple with relatively little means to have the audacity to reach out to Frank Lloyd Wright, a world-renowned architect? Well, Russell had long admired the architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright, but he'd always thought his work was out of the realm of what he could afford, that Frank Lloyd Wright only designed grand, very expensive residences. Then he read an article in the August 1948 Home Beautiful magazine written by Lauren Pope called The Love Affair of a Man and His House, where Mr. Pope, a copy editor who made only $3,000 a year, wrote in glowing terms about the process of building a house Wright designed for his family in Falls Church, Virginia. This story probably is not original. I know that that article inspired so many families to ask Mr. Wright to design a home for them. Pope's words inspired Russell, who immediately wrote to Mr. Wright saying, "Mr. Pope's story opened a whole new world for me. Before I read it, I thought none but the affluent could hope to engage your services. Now I feel like a man who suddenly holds in his embrace the woman who for years he could only worship from afar." 5 days later, Wright replied, "You shall have your nice little home, condense your needs, and we will make you a plan." So why was Frank Lloyd Wright, world-renowned architect that he was at the time, willing and able to design these little gems for these couples from middle of America? Well, he had long been interested in designing affordable homes on a massive scale for the American middle class. In 1901, he published designs for elegant, inexpensive suburban homes in several issues of the Ladies' Home Journal. Wright was also interested in urban planning. He began thinking seriously about that issue in the late 1920s and early 1930s. Wright discussed his views in publications, lectures, and notably The Disappearing City. He gave visual form to his idea for a model environment in Broadacre City. The concept of Usonian houses was conceived at that time, and while Broadacre City would not become a reality, the Usonian home with its signature organic elements, geometric influences, and affordable pricing would. No doubt most of you recognize the picture of Jacob's one house on the screen. The Jacobs house was based on a rectangular module, but Wright would later design square, hexagon, triangular, and much to the Krauses' delight, parallelogram-shaped units to generate floor plans. The modest cost, size, and materials of the Usonian homes in the 1930s and early 40s reflected and responded to the limited budgets of prospective homeowners and the harsh economic realities of the Depression and World War II years. After the war, as the economy improved and wartime restrictions on building materials were lifted, the possibilities for the design of Usonian homes expanded. So by the time Wright began to work on the Kraus House, he had approximately 100 Usonian homes that he had designed and a dozen or more on the drawing board. The Kraus House, however, would be one of the most distinctive and complex designs. So with materials more accessible and Wright's success with complex geometric designs, the design phase of the Kraus House was a piece of cake, right? Not so much. Like with other clients, Frank Lloyd Wright asked the Krauses for their likes and dislikes, and Wright responded with his interpretation. But it took quite a bit of back and forth before they nailed down a design. After reviewing the plan you're looking at now, the Krauses advised Wright that they liked the overall design and arrangement of the rooms and the free flow from one room to another, but admitted to being a little disappointed. They expressed their disenchantment in a letter which stated, "It is difficult to feel justified in making any suggestion which would in any way alter the house that Mr. Wright designed for us. He is the world's greatest architect, and we fetishly worship his genius." But right after that humble and conciliatory preface, Russell went on to describe in a 4-page letter the alterations they desired, including more square footage, essentially a bigger house, a change for the same price, I might add, a change in the location of his studio, and many other modifications. Another letter from Russell noted that the fresh appeal, the punch, and the rhythmic charm of the original drawings are lost in the revisions. You can imagine how Wright felt receiving that correspondence. So he wrote, "Better come here. Let's talk this through." He probably wasn't very pleased. After a personal meeting with Mr. Wright at Taliesin, the Krauses were again on cloud 9, confident that they were on the right path. A letter to Mr. Wright after their meeting with him at Taliesin noted, "You have been with us since we left Spring Green. We wish you everything good, beautiful, and worthwhile unto you. Mr. Wright, we love you." I don't know about you, but that's, I think, more of an emotional roller coaster than I could have handled, and probably not typical of his interactions with all of his clients. But Russell and Ruth hung in there and finally landed upon a final design, which you'll see here. Changes made included moving the studio to the southeast end of the house, thereby elongating the parallelogram plan. Wright designed a triangular brick wall terrace off the studio, sheltered by a soaring roof cantilever, which is one of the most dramatic features of the house and certainly one of the most photographed by visitors. The workspace and utility room were reconfigured. To accommodate the changes, Wright shifted the carport to the east and reduced the size of the former studio, now called the tool house. He also enlarged and reshaped the motor court to conform to the parallelogram geometry. The house has signature elements such as the geometric module, open floor plan, and no basement or attic, but has unique elements such as private spaces being located right off the main communal areas. These departures reflect customizations that fit the Kraus's lifestyle and demonstrate Wright's willingness to create unique designs based on his clients' needs. So with a fabulous design in hand, the construction of the house was a breeze, right? No again. In August 1951, 3 years from the project's inception, the Krauses received working drawings for the house. And I love this image because I get the impression that Lee Patterson, the contractor that the Krauses ultimately partnered with, I'm sure that that position of his hand on his head was one that happened a lot. So the next steps in the process were to find a contractor, subcontractor, and to secure the necessary building materials. Most builders, in Russell's direct quote, wanted no part of it. One of the most challenging aspects of the design was the brickwork. Because a parallelogram shaped module generated the floor plan, almost all the walls of the house met in 60-degree or 120-degree angles, requiring specially designed molds to create angled edges. Getting the steel they needed was another problem. The Krauses lacked what other Wright clients had, a Taliesin apprentice on site, so they struggled without assistance with a host of complex technical issues. Finally, in 1953, they hired the gentleman you see holding his head, Lee Patterson, a man who Russell would describe as a fine young fellow who, while lacking formal training, had a lot of imagination. How about that for a bio? Mr. Patterson turned out to be the right man for the job, hiring bricklayers and other laborers to work through the challenges of interpreting the plans, sourcing material, and working through the other construction issues. As with other Wright clients, Russell and Ruth Kraus were very hands-on in the construction phase. Here we see on the left side of the screen, Russell and Ruth lending a hand. Ruth was the unsung hero in resolving several of the construction issues, especially relating to sourcing of materials. First, she found a solution to the angled brick. She identified Alton Brick Company as the manufacturer of the kind of brick they needed and convinced them to resurrect a retired mold to make the angled edge red shale bricks that they needed. And they did it at a pretty reasonable cost. While the brick problem was solved, other parts of the construction remained mired in a variety of complications that Krauses and Lee Patterson and his team had to figure out. Tidewater red cypress in the quantity and dimensions required and aged to the optimal dryness was an elusive commodity. Ruth, again, stepped up and scoured the country to secure the wood they needed, contacting dozens of lumber companies and forestry associations, but none could fill the order. In desperation, they asked other Wright homeowners about their cypress sources. Ruth Pugh, who with her husband John owned the Wright designed Pugh House in Madison. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that house. And Ruth referred the Krauses to a builder and partner in a lumber firm who could provide most of the required lumber. Many other issues arose during the construction that caused delay or escalated cost, but one by one, the Krauses and their young contractor put their heads together and overcame them. Finally, on New Year's Day, 1956, the Krauses moved into their new home. Here's a picture of the Kraus House when it was completed. And it shows two of Ruth's horses. I might add that while the Krauses worked tirelessly to complete their house, they also complicated the project by asking for a variety of other sort of add-on projects, including a 5-stall stable with tack room, loft, bunk room, kitchen, shower, lavatory, fireplace, and more. You can imagine how giddy with delight the Krauses were to finally be in their house. But in reality, there were a lot of things not fully completed, including the kitchen and much of the Wright design furniture and furnishings and other things they would add later as motivation and money was available. So for close to 45 years, the Kraus, after going through all this labor and resources, they just threw their heart and soul into it. And, you know, the payoff was for 45 years, they enjoyed the seclusion and creativity of their artistic home. And I think these quotes by Ruth and Russell really summarize their feeling. Despite the trials and frustrations, building our little gem has been a wonderful experience for both of us, especially for Russell, who has supervised meticulously the whole operation to make sure there would not be even the slightest deviation or departure from the way Mr. Wright wants it. That's how Ruth felt. And Russell said, "We shall never cease to be grateful that our lives have been touched by his genius." So it was just a beautiful story of love and passion for this house and for each other. And they were grateful until the end of their lives for that experience. But in the late 90s, after Ruth had passed and Russell was in his 80s, struggling to maintain the property and grounds, he sold it to a dedicated group of preservationists who had formed a nonprofit entity called the Frank Lloyd Wright House in Ebsworth Park. When the organization purchased the Kraus House, they found themselves in possession of a rare treasure, a largely unaltered Frank Lloyd Wright house that contained all of its original furniture. They were also fortunate that the Kraus had been such conscientious stewards of the property. Due to their faithful adherence to Wright's design intentions, no insensitive or damaging alterations or additions had been made, and the house was structurally sound. Furthermore, Wright or Taliesin had approved most of the work that had been done over the years. Still, the 45-year-old house was in need of substantial restoration. The organization recruited John Eifler of Chicago as lead architect of the restoration, and it embarked upon a $300,000 restoration project. And the majority of the work focused on replacement of exterior brick, of the terrace, lanai, and in the motor court. Other restoration work included the replacement of wood on the terrace doors, which received a lot of sun and water exposure. The interior of the home was quite well preserved, and mostly restoration involved cleaning and restoring surfaces and textiles. In order to open the house to the public, the driveway was widened and a small parking lot was added. In the restoration process, it was important to the organization that it achieved museum quality standards. So all the folks that you're seeing here doing restoration work were highly qualified and came from all over the country to help with the restoration. There is a lot to be said about the restoration of the house. So perhaps Heather can invite us back to provide a focused discussion on that part of the story. Let's get back to the plan, because I'd like to prepare you to take a tour of the house as it exists today. And I'd like you to notice, which I think is very obvious, the overlapping parallelogram design, which is very dramatic. And I want to encourage you to use a bit of imagination as you consider how this unique plan creates an open flow and sense of being in a much larger space than the actual 1,900 square feet that it is. Now we're going to try to, if you follow that, that marker to lead you up the driveway, show you where you enter the house. You walk down a narrow hallway, and in that time period, you're compressed and then released into the larger dining room space, which is open. There are no walls that go completely up to the ceiling. It's very open. Let's walk into the master bedroom, which is just off the main area, which is that design is a departure of what Frank Lloyd Wright would normally do, where he would separate the private and public spaces. And then if we walk out of the master bedroom, we can go into the second bedroom, which was used quite a bit by the Krauses. And then you make your way out back through the living room, and then you'll find the kitchen, or the workspace, as Frank Lloyd Wright would refer to it, which is right off of the main area. We have an open floor plan kitchen, and then if you make a turn, you are in Russell Kraus's studio. And then you make your way back out. So let's take a look at what the house looks like. So in this image, we've just entered the house. This is a view of the gallery looking towards the guest room, the second bedroom. At the entry, the ceiling is low, a very compressed space. On the right is a series of windows with gallery shelves extending the entire length of the wall. When you look down the hallway, you see the full length of the house, and the glow of the Tidewater red cypress is warm and welcoming as you make your way into the larger living space. After walking down the narrow hallway, you are, again, using one of Frank Lloyd Wright's words, you are released into the living dining room, the largest area in the house. Light coming through the terrace stained glass panels illuminates the room, and on sunny days, it casts a beautiful image of the design in the glass onto the floor and furniture in almost a mirror-like image. The stained glass panels, which were designed by Russell Kraus, reflect the geometry and colors of the house. In this picture, you can see on the right-hand side, one of the origami chairs and some of the other Wright design furniture, much of which Russell Kraus built. This view shows the living room with the original textiles, drapes, and upholstery and Wright design Asian influenced furniture. Russell Kraus, who in addition to being a talented artist, was a skilled craftsman, so he enlisted the help of his father to construct some of the furniture following Wright's design, including the dining room table on the left of this image, which was an intricate design of interlocking geometries, 10 octagonal hassocks and shelves. In person, this is the view where you can best see the parallelogram grid embedded in the concrete floor that, of course, informs the geometry of everything in the house. And because the art pottery makes such a dramatic statement on those shelves, I wanted to point out that that is a permanent collection that was acquired by the Frank Lloyd Wright House in Ebsworth Park organization. It was not owned by the Krauses. Here's another view of the light screens, as Mr. Wright would refer to them. This floor to ceiling glass allows daylight to spill into the interior and connect interior spaces to the natural beauty of the site. This is the view facing west when you look out onto the large terrace, commonly referred to as the prow. In classic Wright design maneuver, the terrace expands the living space by adding an outdoor room that adds to the relatively small square footage of the house. And perhaps more importantly, it forges a close connection between interior and exterior space. Since the house is sited into a persimmon grove, the view of the natural beauty around the house is always stunning. Russell described it in, I think, a particularly compelling way. He said, "In the autumn, you can see thousands of orange balls against the blue sky. It's absolutely spectacular." One of my favorite aesthetics of the house is how the design and colors of the stained glass spill onto the floor and furniture in the afternoon sun, through the living and dining room and the bedroom, all that beautiful light coming in from the west side of the house. This is what you see entering the master bedroom from the living room. There's no door. In fact, there are no doors anywhere in the house except for each of the bathrooms. You can see the built-in desk with the mitered window above it and built-in closets with piano hinge doors. On the left of the screen, you see the second terrace, which has taller walls for greater privacy. That lanai was something that that was important to the Krauses. And so Frank Lloyd Wright included it in his design. The glass panel doors leading out to the terrace have the same beautiful stained glass design as the living room. This is the master bedroom. And as you can see, the bed also conforms to the geometry of the house. The bedspread and all the textiles in the house were selected by the Krauses and Cornelia Brierly, a Taliesin fellow who flew to St. Louis from Taliesin to help the Krauses put the finishing touches on their interior. This is one of the best views of the dramatic ceiling scape. And this is just, never fails just to be, elicit a sense of awe and wonder to our guests, because it's where 5 different ceiling planes converge into an origami-like folded wooded composition. You can imagine for the carpenters, the detailing was one of the greatest challenges. So let's go into the guest room or the second bedroom. And again, the geometry informs everything in the room, including the shape of the bed, which clearly is a hexagon. Another view of the second bedroom shows the built-in desk and the Taliesin 3 light. And you can see in this shot how the panel lighting illuminates the ceiling, and the Tidewater red cypress just presents such a beautiful glow throughout the house. So we've now returned to the living room, where you can see some of the signature Usonian elements, such as the large dominant hearth. And in the kitchen, or workspace, is right off the living dining room. Mr. Wright was particularly fond of dining in front of the hearth. So all the furniture can be moved to different places. So if the Krauses would choose to move the table in front of the hearth or rearrange the furniture in any other way, it was designed to be versatile in that way. So let's enter the kitchen and see this beautiful open floor plan. Unlike the other areas in the house, which is almost all Tidewater red cypress, here the counters are maple, the countertops are maple, and the cabinets are birch. There's a mitered window, which you really can't see too well in this picture, which provides an unobstructed view of the persimmon grove and brings the natural vibrancy of the nature inside. What you can't see is a skylight, which creates light and vertical volume to an otherwise small kitchen. When you turn the corner in the kitchen, you see another room. I guess you could call it a bonus room, because it was originally designed to be a utility space where the boiler would be kept. And in the construction phase, the contractor advised the Krauses they may want to consider digging a small space out underneath this area and expand the kitchen, which they did. Again, there's a skylight, which brings in a lot of natural light into this second kitchen area. So if you walk out of the kitchen, and you will make a right-hand turn, and you will be in Russell's studio. Again, he was a working artist. He worked from home. You can see a large skylight, a mitered window, cantilevered terrace, and another fireplace. Once Russell understood the potential of the design, he really did push the envelope and asked for a lot of these beautiful features, so he would be inspired and surrounded by natural beauty while he worked. There's also a bathroom next to his studio. And again, this is just such an amazing space for an artist to have to work, and a place where he could meet his clients that was separate from the living areas, but still connected to his wife and other areas of the home. So to conclude our story of this little gem, let's circle back to Ruth and Russell. Here are a couple of actually paintings. They're pictures, but Russell painted these. They are actually hanging in Russell's studio. And I think, again, you know, in their own words, it just sums up their feeling about the house that they lived and cherished for so long. Our house is as much a part of the locale as the creek bed and the trees, the wildflowers and the birds, looking for all the world as though it pushed its way out of the ground like the Mayapples and morels. We love our house, Mr. Wright, love it passionately and intensely. To us, it is not an inanimate brick, mortar, steel, wood. To us, it is a personality, a thing that lives and breathes. So Ruth passed away in 1992, and Russell, you know, sold the house to the organization. And as we saw, you know, it passed through hands. But I think this is a great way to summarize the feeling that the original owners have, and the feeling that we, as part of this nonprofit organization, as the new stewards, continue to have for the house. So let's conclude by showing you a video that I think captures the magic that the experience of being at the house really offers. All right, well, that concludes, you know, the storytelling portion, but I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Kathryn, what a lovely Usonian, and it looks so well cared for. It's really amazing. And I have to say, a first for me that Wright designed beds in parallelogram and hexagonal shapes. I've not seen that before in any other house.
Well, I will say that, you know, it does tend to be a great reveal, you know, for tours, because people around that corner, they don't expect it. And, truly at every turn, the house really reveals something special and unexpected. And so, yeah, there's many unique qualities in the house, but definitely the parallelogram bed is a real crowd pleaser.
Absolutely. Hopefully the taller person got the correct, part of that end of the bed.
Well, there's always a lot of discussion about
Yeah.
you have to figure yourself to make that work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we do have some questions today, and I'll just start with the site for the house in the St. Louis area. But we had a question about whether the neighborhood, if you will, is suburban, rural, or how would you describe it?
A great question. Well, of course, like other Usonian homeowners, when the land was purchased, it was country. In fact, we have it documented that Frank Lloyd Wright said, "Move, go as far out as you can away from the city, and purchase as much land as possible." And
Mhm.
that's what the Krauses did. But right now, as development started to sort of encroach and development happened around the house, it is more of a suburban. Kirkwood, Missouri is about 20 minutes outside of the city of St. Louis. It's a lovely municipality. And the house is in a 10.5 acre park. So there's 10.5 acres of natural beauty around it. You really can't see any neighbors. And it's within what's called Sugar Creek Valley, which is a sort of a community of very organic, a lot of organic architecture, not designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, but in the spirit of Frank Lloyd Wright. So it's a suburban area, very nature minded, and it's just really continues to be a beautiful setting, both from a larger community standpoint, and fortunately the house is sitting in the middle of a 10.5 acre park.
Lovely. And related to that, we did also have a question of whether there are other Frank Lloyd Wright designs in the St. Louis area. Do you know of any?
There are 5 Frank Lloyd Wright properties in the state of Missouri, and there's 2 in St. Louis. The other property is called the Pappas House, and it's about 15 minutes away from the Kraus House. And actually, it was built around the same time. So we know that the Pappases and the Krauses, had conversations about how things were going. This is a Usonian model, and the Pappas House is a Usonian automatic. And recently it it was sold by the Pappas family to a private owner. So it is being preserved.
Oh, wonderful. There's a question here about the fact that at many Usonian houses, there were cabinet makers who did a lot of the interior woodwork. Do you know if that's the case at the Kraus House?
Well, Russell Kraus was, wow, quite a Renaissance man and very skilled. He was a great artist, but he was also a skilled craftsman. And so he and his father did a lot of the carpentry. They built a lot of the furniture following Wright's designs. They did a lot of the build out of the interior.
Okay. And what type of material is the floor?
The floor is very similar to other Usonian homes. It's a Cherokee red concrete floor with radiant heat.
Okay, great.
And the students who visit on student tours love to take off their shoes in the winter and feel that heat.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a delight for them, and it's a delight for us to show that off.
There is a comment here about the dining table. It looked to me like there was a dining table set, but then also you had something that looked to me like a low heritage Henredon table set.
Yes.
Is that correct, or?
Well, yes. I'm not sure of the official name of the lower table, but I think that is correct. The dining table is different. So there's 2 tables. The dining table is actually, it has a Taliesin. I don't know if we can get back to that slide, or. uh, there we go. On the right-hand side, you see the dining room table, and you see the Taliesin 3 light. And interestingly, that light is not attached to the bottom of the table. It's attached to the top. So you can actually pull that dining room table out and move it anywhere you want in that room. And then the other table is, your description was perfect. It's a low slung table. Also, it can be moved wherever the Krauses might have wanted it to be. But those two pieces are original to the house, and you know, just very designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, original and in very good condition.
It looks like they have a mix of furniture that might have been designed for the house, but also Wright designed for other homes or commercial.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. I mean, anybody, and I would imagine a lot of the people participating this afternoon have a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright's properties, a lot of the interiors of Usonian homes. And again, it's a mix of signature elements like the large hearth, the Asian influenced furniture, the built-in seating. But it's impressive how much, for this, you know, relatively small commission, how much he listened to the Krauses, what they wanted. Um, and conversely, the Krauses listened to what Frank Lloyd Wright wanted for them. So yeah, this furniture is not is not totally original. And actually, you know, getting back to the first question, a lot of it was built from Frank Lloyd Wright's design by Russell Kraus.
Okay. So getting back to that hexagonal bed. This is kind of an interesting question. Can you explain the challenges associated with the hexagonal mattress in the guest bedroom? Perhaps just in terms of, do you need to replace it? How could you?
Yeah, it's interesting that those beds have a gravitational pull of interest from folks. Well, what I'll say is that you know, the interpretation of the plans for the construction phase and interpreting how you achieve certain elements was always a challenge. So they knew there was a hexagon and a parallelogram designed bed, but there wasn't a lot of information about how they were supposed to, you know, make that happen. So once again, Ruth, this fiercely determined woman, investigated, and she found that there was a manufacturer of hospital beds that was able to create that shape. And when you lift up the bedspread, you can see it's actually two mattresses put together, two angled twin size mattresses. And that again was provided by a hospital bed manufacturer that I guess had some ability to customize mattresses. And I mean, this this house is run as a house museum. We ask our guests to, you know, not sit on the furniture and things. So, I mean, we can preserve the beds at this point, so we're not having to, you know, change out mattresses and things. And how the Krauses did it, you know, I don't know, but they lived pretty gently in that house, because when we purchased it, the house really was in very good condition, and the furnishings, which is really rare. And we're very grateful and fortunate to have had that opportunity.
I'm sure you would have mentioned it, but it sounds like they didn't raise children in the house.
They did not have children.
Yeah.
Did not have children, which perhaps, you know, so they weren't doing what some of the other Usonian homeowners were doing, which was expanding the house, which I think for this particular design may have been more difficult. It also allowed, you know, them to not have walls that went all the way up to the ceilings, and to not have doors on in between rooms. So I think that some of the just really spectacular elements of this design, most people with families may not have felt it to be real practical, but they lived in it and enjoyed it, and fortunately did so that we could share it with the public
Right.
in such great shape.
You mentioned radiant heat. Is there another heating system in the house? Boiler heat or?
There is not.
Oh, okay. The
And
utilities, I had a question about where the utilities are located. You had mentioned just off the kitchen, I think.
right. So originally, Wright designed there you have it. Wright designed this area here to be a utility room, and Lee Patterson, the contractor, said to Russell Kraus, you may want to rethink that because it's going to be noisy and smelly and just not great to have it that close to the kitchen. So they dug out an area below what you're looking at now, where the utilities reside.
Okay. You mentioned Lee, the contractor. Was he involved in the restoration? Would he have been around at that point and working?
He would come back and visit the house, and we were able to have Lee do some presentations and talk to our docents, and certainly the leadership of the nonprofit organization had a lot of time to interact and talk with him, but he was not directly involved in the restoration, but he did provide insight into the process of building the house.
Oral history, very valuable. This is a good question about Mr. Kraus's work. Any collections of his art anywhere on view or in storage or otherwise?
Yeah, what I failed to point out is we do have some of his work in the house. So we do have a few of his paintings. A private owner has most of Russell's art.
Okay.
He who was Russell's business partner still retains most of his collection.
Oh, great. And it was mostly in the vein of illustration and painting?
It was a really broad range of early work, of just an artist learning through sketching and just some of his washu portfolio, all the way through sculpture and oils and mosaics, tapestries. He really was really had a broad repertoire that he was well versed in.
Mm.
He did things like hand carved ornaments, Christmas ornaments to display and to give to friends. He would design his own cards and share those with folks. So, I mean, he was just an amazing artist.
Very cool.
Yeah.
If you've got time, I've got just a few more questions. I'm getting a lot of compliments on the presentation, Kathryn. I want to pass that on.
That's great. It's, when you have, when Lydia went to the house to take care of something yesterday, and she saw this fresh blanket of snow, we both agreed that as many times as we are at the house, it still takes our breath away. It's really a special place. So to the degree that I can share that with, the audience and give them a glimpse into how spectacular this property really is, I'm happy to do it. I'm glad everybody enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Any landscaping plans that Wright or someone else did for the house originally?
There are some landscape plans. When the Krauses lived in the house, we understand that Ruth had a parallelogram garden. She was a gardener. There were plans for a stable and some other things on the property. I don't think we had an opportunity to show you, we still have grapevines that were planted by the Krauses. This gives me a good opportunity. This is sort of an addition to the question, or it builds upon the question, which is, when the nonprofit organization purchased the house and grounds, it immediately deeded it to St. Louis County. So St. Louis County is actually the owner of the house and grounds, and we lease the house and operate it as a house museum. And the county, as our partner, takes care of the grounds maintenance. So they were the ones yesterday when it snowed here for the first time this winter to come and plow the driveway. And they also, maintain the grounds by, in particular, mowing and maintaining this 10.5 acre public park. So at this point, we Frank Lloyd Wright did do the landscape design, and much of what he designed is what you saw when we did the exterior tour.
Okay. And when the Krauses were living on the land, was it also a 10-acre parcel when they?
Yes, the property sort of expanded and contracted depending on some things that were going on. So initially they bought quite a bit of land. At one point they bought additional land to ensure privacy. And then they sold some land to developers who developed some of the neighborhoods. Lydia, do you want to add anything to that relating to the sort of the expansion and contraction of the property?
Yeah, I know that there was a section to the south side that was added, so to keep private homes from being developed too close. So the house itself, you virtually cannot see any other homes or buildings from the house itself. It's very secluded, even though really there's, houses, subdivision all around us. I jumped on because I was seeing a number of questions about Russell's stained glass. Oh. And it occurred to me that if we were to direct people to our website, there was a webinar that we did last fall that was about Russell's stained glass. There was a couple here that have moved into a former glass studio for which Russell worked. And so there's a lot of pictures in that webinar of Russell's work, because we're getting a lot of questions about where people can see his stained glass work. And that is the best place I can think of to direct people to. So that is on our website. And it was the Jacoby Glass Studios, and that's what the webinar was about. So jump in on that.
Great. Thank you, Lydia. Yeah. We have just a few more rather straightforward questions about the total square footage of the house.
Okay, it's 1,900 square feet.
Okay.
But as I shared with folks earlier in the presentation, the design of the home, and of course that was the intention, makes it feel much more spacious than that.
Mm. And the construction cost, if you know that.
Well, I'm going to, the intention, Russell's intention was not to spend any more than $35,000 on the house. Hard stop. Well, you know how that goes usually with any kind of construction project, but it went beyond there. And Russell had, what Russell would share with us, how much beyond that it actually went. Lydia, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think one of the things is because it stretched on for so long, noting that they did not finish the kitchen until the 60s, air conditioning was added in the 70s. So those construction costs drug on. And I think I've heard estimates in the closer to 60,000 range, probably by the time it was done.
Right.
Thank you.
It's sort of hard to know when to hit the stopwatch, on that.
Yeah. Turns out it wasn't a hard stop.
Right.
Well, that's great. I should ask you in these times, are you open to visitors at this point?
Well, the house is closed for the protection of the public and our docents, so it is not open for public tours. We have worked very hard to develop virtual tours and experiences, which can be accessed through our website, ebsworthpark.org. We also participate we participated in Wright virtual visits in collaboration with many other Frank Lloyd Wright public sites, where we swapped tours. So there's quite a few virtual tours on our website and available through our social media pages. That is the very best way to really learn more about the house and take advantage of the new programming. And then also, I always laugh when people do this as presenters, but I want to just share that a lot of what I was sharing with you, we know and is very well articulated in a book written on the house. Just, exactly what I shared, from design, restoration to, its current operation as a house museum in this book. And this book's available online as well.
Great.
So, and we again, we like to stay in contact with, the folks, and we don't know, what's going to happen and later in the summer or later this year, and we'll just be continuing to assess the situation, and we'll open in some adapted way when we can.
Sounds good. You're in the same boat we are. We don't know what's happening yet at Monona Terrace.
A lot of uncertainty.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you again. A terrific presentation. There's been a lot of compliments from our audience. And I think we had maybe 60 questions from my math. So I'm pretty sure I didn't ask 60. And if something is burning, you know that you'll get a follow-up email tomorrow. And certainly take that opportunity to tell me anything you like, or to ask a question, and we'll see if we can get an answer for you. But I'm sure your website too has lots of resources. Thank you so much, Kathryn. Thanks so much, Lydia, for your technical wizardry. And one question that's relevant. So
okay,
the website address.
It's ebsworthpark.org. EBS. Lydia, do you want to maybe, would it be easy to get that last screen of the video, or EBSWORTHPARK.org?
Yeah.
And we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again. Thanks so much, audience. Join us in about a month. There will be some information coming your way soon about our February Wright Design Series. We hope everybody has a good rest of the week and weekend, and enjoy your snow if you have it. We're sitting on about 8 or 10 inches here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.